The closest I've ever come to opening the van door on a highway and walking back on foot was that night. And we were in the middle of nowhere, in Puno, with a cold that cut straight through to the bone. We were traveling at night toward Yunguyo. It was one of those trips you make out of necessity, not by choice. An important family gathering was coming up, and because of work, the only time I could travel was in the early hours. The minivan was full, but quiet. Some people were asleep, others staring blankly out the window. The road was a black line between dark hills. Sometimes you could make out the shadow of the lake, sometimes only bare earth. No house lights, no town lights, just the distant glow of the moon and the van's headlights. I was a few rows behind the driver, on a window side. I remember it clearly because I thought, at least I'll be able to sleep leaning against the glass. I didn't sleep. At some point, without anything strange having happened, I felt the atmosphere inside the van change. The driver, who had been listening to the radio at low volume, turned it off suddenly. Then he turned off the interior lights too, leaving only the dashboard glow and the headlights cutting through the dark ahead. The silence was strange, strange enough that several people lifted their heads. "Close the curtains," the driver said, without turning around. "All of them." He said it in a voice that left no room for jokes. A woman asked, "Why, son? What's happening?" He took a slow breath. "Just do it, please. And don't look outside, no matter what." There was a nervous murmur, plastic curtain hooks clicking, curtains sliding shut. I figured it was a safety thing. Maybe there were robbers in the area, something like that. "Are there thieves?" someone in the back asked. The driver shook his head. "They're not thieves," he said. "They're something else. Better not to look at them." Then he added something that sent a chill through me, even though in that moment I wanted to write it off as exaggeration. "They notice when someone looks at them." They. That word hung in the air. I'm not one to believe in folk tales. Growing up, I heard stories about duendes, condemned souls, spirits wandering the roads. My grandfather, who was from Puno, talked about the Cariciri like it was a neighbor, that creature that comes out at night to steal fat, blood, and if it can, the soul of anyone left alone on the road. I grew up thinking those were stories to scare children. That night, I learned to respect them. One by one, everyone closed their curtains until the van was almost completely dark inside. Only a thin line of light slipped through where someone hadn't pulled theirs all the way shut. Out of reflex, I closed mine too. But curiosity got the better of me. Curiosity and the stupid ego of an adult who thinks nothing is going to happen to them. I thought, the driver is just spooked. He probably saw a big dog, something like that. Nothing's going to happen if I take a quick look. I waited. Let a few minutes pass. I could hear breathing all around me. The woman in the seat next to me was praying in a low voice. Someone else was fidgeting nervously with their hands. The driver at the wheel sat rigid, leaning slightly forward, gripping tight. He was going a little faster than usual, but not recklessly, like someone who wants to get through a stretch quickly, but without crashing. When everything seemed to have calmed down, when I figured that whatever was out there must be far behind us by now, I decided to look. It was the smallest movement. With 2 fingers, I lifted just the corner of the curtain, barely enough for one eye to peek through. I didn't want it to be obvious from the front that I was disobeying. The moonlight lit up the road like a pool of lead. The minivan's headlights carved a tunnel, asphalt, a few potholes, stones, nothing else. For a few seconds I didn't see anything out of the ordinary. I thought, see, it was nothing. And right then, the headlights fell on something in the road. At first I thought it was a dog. It was crouched on the asphalt, hunched over, as if it were eating something off the ground. The minivan was closing in fast. The headlights lit it up more clearly. And then I saw that it wasn't a dog. It was too large for that. The body, what I could make out, looked like that of a thin man covered in rags with dirty skin, like someone who hadn't seen water in years. The legs were long, bent in a strange position, pressed flat against the asphalt. But the head was something else entirely. It had the shape of a large dog, maybe a mastiff or something similar. A long snout, drooping ears, but it wasn't covered in fur. The skin was nearly smooth, pulled tight, as if it had been skinned not long ago, and then dried out in the cold. Right then, just as we were about to pass it, the creature lifted its head. What I saw in that moment, I wouldn't wish on anyone. The eyes were not animal eyes, not those glossy black eyes you recognize in street dogs. They were human eyes, yellow, bloodshot, with red veins mapped across them. They looked directly at me. It wasn't the look of an animal startled by headlights. It was the look of someone who recognizes you. I felt as if a cold hand had reached into my chest and grabbed my heart. I couldn't see clearly what was underneath it, what it had been crouched over. I only managed to make out something dark spread across the asphalt, with a shape I don't want to describe. In that instant, as if it had sensed my gaze, the creature tilted its head slightly, like it was adjusting the angle to get a better look at me. The curtain trembled in my hand, and the driver, as if he had somehow felt that someone in the back had disobeyed, pressed down hard on the accelerator. The minivan lurched forward. I let go of the curtain. The creature disappeared into the darkness behind us. Nobody screamed. That struck me as strange. I felt like my chest was about to burst, like the fear was going to come pouring out of my mouth. But the rest of the passengers stayed in that same tense silence, breathing hard, some praying faster. Then I understood something. I wasn't the only one who knew. Almost everyone in that van had heard the Cariciri talked about at some point. Maybe they hadn't seen it, but they knew enough to obey when the driver said, "Don't look outside." I had been the fool. My grandfather used to say the Cariciri doesn't only look for fat or blood, that sometimes it also takes a piece of your soul when you look it directly in the eyes. That's why some people came back from long trips with hollow eyes, unable to sleep, always dreaming the same dream. Something inside them has been drained, he'd say. In that moment, my body still shaking in the seat, I thought about him. I thought about all the times I'd heard him speak about that creature as if it were real, and I had laughed quietly to myself. I wasn't laughing anymore. I don't know how much time passed before the driver felt ready to speak. We were still moving, faster than before, the road finally eating up the kilometers. He let out a long breath. "It's over," he said quietly. "We're past it." Some people ventured to pull their curtains back slightly. Others didn't. I didn't. I wasn't going to risk seeing those eyes again, in the side mirror or in some shadow passing outside. "I'm sorry, everyone," the driver said. "I didn't want to frighten you, but it's better not to look at them. When you look at them, they remember you." Nobody protested. Nobody said a word against him. An older woman, 2 seats ahead of me, said quietly, "My father saw it once, too, near I Love. He was never the same after." The rest of the trip was silence. I closed my eyes to try to sleep, but every time that image of the road surfaced in my mind, I saw it again. The hunched posture, the ragged body, the hairless dog's head, and those eyes that were too human. I had the feeling that around every bend, something was running alongside the minivan in the dark, keeping pace, as if it hadn't fully stayed behind. We arrived in Yunguyo just before dawn. The sky was beginning to lighten, and the cold was slipping through the door cracks like a blade. When I got out of the minivan, my legs were still trembling slightly. The driver was gathering his things. I walked over to him. "Did you see it too?" I asked him straight out. He looked at me with tired eyes. "If you saw it, better not to say it too loud," he answered. "But yes, it's not the first time it's put itself in the middle of the road." "What? What was it?" I pushed, even though I already knew the answer. He shrugged. "I only know what the old ones told me," he said, "that it wanders around here, through these villages looking for people traveling alone, vans with few passengers, walkers, drunks passed out on the side of the road, that it's no longer a man or a dog, that it's something in between, and that when it looks at you, it remembers your face." He put a hand on my shoulder. "If you dream about it, don't follow it," he added. "And if it calls your name, don't answer." That was his goodbye. Since that night, every time someone mentions Yunguyo, Puno, or driving through the Highlands in the early hours, I go quiet for a moment. I don't say I saw the Cariciri. I don't say it out loud. But when I'm alone and that scene comes back to me, I know that what I saw was not a dog, not a drunk, not a thief in a costume. It was something else, something that crouches on a road like an animal, but looks at you like a man who keeps the faces of everyone who dared to look back. So, if you ever travel at night on the empty roads of Puno, and the driver asks you to close your curtain and not look outside, listen to him, because sometimes, out there in the dark, it's not robbers, it's him. And if you look into his eyes, the trip might end, but the image will stay with you forever.